In 2021, Airbus unveiled what they called the most advanced freighter ever built, a new composite fuselage, state-of-the-art engines, better range and fuel efficiency than anything else in the cargo market. On paper, it looked like a slam dunk, and then airlines looked at it, ran the numbers, and mostly said no. The Airbus A350F currently has around 30 firm orders. Boeing's competing freighter, the 777-8F, has more than 200. That's not a close race, that's a blowout. And for a plane that Airbus has been betting on to anchor its entire cargo strategy, those numbers are dangerously close to a program that doesn't survive. So what happened? How does the most technically advanced freighter in the world end up with almost nobody wanting to buy it? To understand this, you need to go back to early 2020, when the pandemic hit and passenger travel collapsed overnight. Something strange happened to air cargo. It boomed. Not just a little, it absolutely exploded. Here's why. When passenger planes stop flying, so does belly cargo. About half of all air freight in the world doesn't travel on dedicated freighters. It travels in the lower deck of passenger planes, loaded underneath passenger luggage on flights crossing the globe. When those flights stopped, shippers had nowhere to put their goods. Demand shot up, capacity dried up, and freight rates went through the roof. Airlines that had freighters were suddenly printing money. Operators who had spent years struggling to turn a profit on cargo suddenly couldn't move goods fast enough. And so, predictably, everyone started ordering freighters, new planes, converted passenger jets, anything that could carry cargo. The logic seemed obvious. This is the future of aviation. Cargo is where the money is now. That thinking is exactly what Airbus was counting on when they formally launched the A350F in July 2021. The A350F is the freighter version of the A350, Airbus's flagship wide-body passenger jet. The same basic airframe, redesigned for cargo, a massive main deck, a huge cargo door for oversized freight, and a range of more than 8,000 nautical miles. Enough to fly from Hong Kong to Chicago non-stop with a full load. Because it's built on the A350 platform, it uses the same engines, the same systems, and the same pilot-type rating. If an airline already operates A350 passenger aircraft, the freighter version can fit into the operation almost seamlessly. Airbus's pitch was straightforward. The aging 747-400F, which has been the backbone of global air freight for decades, is finally running out of road. Someone has to replace it. The A350F is that shipment. Cleaner, more efficient, and designed for the next 30 years of cargo demand. For about 18 months, it looked like Airbus might be right. Air France-KLM placed an order. Singapore Airlines Cargo signed up. Several leasing companies followed. Airbus appeared to be building momentum. Then the cargo boom ended. And it ended fast. By late 2022, the freight market had almost completely reversed. Fuel costs surged. Consumer spending shifted back towards services. The inventory glut created during the pandemic was finally being worked through, and demand for urgent air cargo began to cool. Cargo rates that had reached historic highs came crashing back down. Suddenly, airlines and freight operators that had been scrambling to add capacity found themselves with more aircraft than they needed. Some parked aircraft, some deferred deliveries. And the last thing most operators wanted was to commit to a brand new freighter costing hundreds of millions of dollars that wouldn't even arrive until 2026 or 2027. That's the timing problem at the heart of the A350F story. Airbus launched the aircraft at the peak of a cargo boom, collected some early orders, and then watched the market turn against them before the first aircraft even entered service. The airlines that might have been interested were no longer in a hurry. And the airlines that weren't interested had no reason to reconsider. But timing alone doesn't explain everything. Because even if the market had remained strong, the A350F was always facing a structural problem that had nothing to do with cargo demand. The global air freight industry is heavily influenced by two companies, FedEx and UPS. Together, they operate the two largest cargo airline fleets in the world. If you're Airbus and you want to build a successful freighter program, you need one of those two companies on your side, not only because of the size of their orders, but because of the signal it sends to the rest of the market. When FedEx or UPS buys your aircraft, it instantly gains credibility. The problem for Airbus is that both companies are deeply committed to Boeing aircraft. FedEx operates a fleet built around Boeing and McDonnell Douglas jets, 77s, 777s, and MD-11s, their maintenance infrastructure, pilot training programs, and spare parts networks are all built around Boeing products. Switching to Airbus wouldn't simply mean buying a different aircraft. It would mean rebuilding large parts of their operation. That cost is incredibly difficult to justify unless the competing aircraft is dramatically better, not just slightly better. UPS faces a very similar situation. Their fleet is built around Boeing 767s and 747 freighters. The same switching costs apply. And Boeing has been aggressively marketing the 777-8F as a natural fit for both operators. So the two customers that matter most to the success of any new freighter program are effectively locked into Boeing's ecosystem. Not impossible to win, but very difficult. And then there's another challenge that often gets overlooked: the second-hand aircraft market. Right now, the world is full of relatively young aircraft being converted from passenger service into freighters. Many of these aircraft still have decades of useful cargo life remaining, and they can be acquired at a fraction of the cost of a new-build freighter. For a cargo operator, the math becomes very simple. Do you spend more than $200 million on a brand new A350F and wait several years for delivery? Or do you buy a converted freighter today for a fraction of the price and put it to work immediately? For many operators, that's not a difficult decision. The used aircraft wins. This is something Airbus may have underestimated when launching the A350F. The market they expected to replace aging freighters isn't replacing them with new aircraft. It's replacing them with converted passenger jets. And that source of supply isn't disappearing anytime soon. So where does that leave the A350F? Right now, it's sitting in a genuinely uncomfortable position. Roughly 30 firm orders from a handful of operators, a cargo market that's recovering, but cautiously, and a delivery schedule that pushes first service toward the late 2020s. Airbus hasn't pulled the plug, and they probably won't anytime soon, because doing so would result in an enormous write-off and a major blow to their credibility in the cargo market. But they're also not getting the order momentum that would make the program clearly viable. The break-even number for a program like this is estimated to be somewhere around 200 aircraft. At the current pace, reaching that number could take the better part of 2 decades. That's not necessarily fatal for Airbus. The A350 passenger jet is one of the most successful wide-body aircraft ever built, with more than 1,500 orders, and the freighter shares a huge amount of infrastructure with the passenger version. But it does mean the A350F, as a standalone business case, looks increasingly shaky. There's a broader pattern worth sitting with here, because this isn't the first time Airbus has built an impressive airplane and watched the market respond with a shrug. The A380 was a genuine engineering achievement. Passengers loved flying on it. Airlines that operated it at scale, especially Emirates, found that it worked remarkably well. But it was built for a version of the aviation market that never fully materialized. It needed high-volume hub-to-hub routes, passengers willing to connect through major airports, and airports willing to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in specialized infrastructure. When the market shifted toward point-to-point flying and smaller, more efficient twin-engine aircraft, the A380 had no answer. The A350F is a different kind of challenge, but the underlying problem is surprisingly similar. Airbus built a technically superior product and assumed the market would organize itself around the aircraft's strengths. The idea that the A350F would naturally replace aging 747 freighters made sense in isolation. But markets don't operate in isolation. They have existing infrastructure, existing maintenance networks, existing supplier relationships, and existing fleets. Right now, all of those factors are pointing away from the A350F. So what could change the story? A few things. If cargo demand surges again, and there are signs that it could as e-commerce continues growing and supply chains become more diversified, the economics of new freighter purchases become much more attractive. If the supply of converted freighters dries up faster than expected, operators will be forced to look more seriously at new build alternatives. And if Airbus can secure a major anchor customer, someone like DHL, Cargolux, or a large Asian cargo carrier, it could change the narrative almost overnight. A large order doesn't just add aircraft to the backlog, it creates confidence. It tells the market that someone has done the math and believes in the program. But as of today, none of those things have happened, and the window won't stay open forever. Boeing continues to push aggressively with the 777-8F. The cargo boom that helped launch the A350F is now a distant memory, and the airlines and operators that matter most are either deeply embedded in Boeing ecosystems or simply waiting to see how the market evolves before making any major commitments. The reality is that Airbus didn't build a bad airplane. Far from it. The A350F will probably be one of the most capable freighters ever built once it enters service. Technically speaking, it may very well be the best freighter in the sky. But aviation history has shown us something important. The best airplane doesn't always win. The airplane that fits the market wins. The airplane that fits the timing, the infrastructure, the economics, and the buying habits of the people signing the checks. That's the airplane that succeeds. And right now, the A350F is still waiting for the market to catch up to it. The question is whether it has enough time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this aviation breakdown, be sure to subscribe. There's a lot more aviation content coming your way.